Modern society is run by an entrenched and heartless financial elite. Of course, this is nothing new. It's been the case for most of history, but these days the ruling class have more effective tools with which to maintain power. They include mass communications technology, monopoly control of mainstream institutions, and media and universities staffed by thousands of trained SEALs. And here I want to apologize. This is depressing info. Recognizing the savagery of the elite and the resources at their command, it's easy to get discouraged. On the other hand, seeing their cunning and ruthlessness clearly is very interesting. This stuff is totally alien, and they're like another species. It's also important to understand their machinations and the deceptive devices at work throughout our institutions. Without this knowledge, as mentioned, the public are puppets on the string, and there's a significant payoff. Unlike 99% of pundits, I'll offer plans of actions that could make things much better. For one thing, the public have consumer dollars and the vote. These should be the greatest powers on earth. They would be if the public were not hypnotized by the propaganda machine. That brings us to another elite tool, the endless supply of emotional levers and rhetorical tricks filling the public square. Some were devised in the ancient world, and some in the present day to work in conjunction with media conglomerates. This fakery has concealed the power structure for decades, not only from the public, but also from professional researchers. Yet elite power is clear to see in government policy, the media content used to legitimize it, and the historical events that brought us here. In the early 1900s, society was controlled by Wall Street finance and large corporations. As these became more corrupt, they caused the Great Depression. That brought the rise of populism and 50 years of middle-class prosperity. It was very nice and good. The New Deal ran from 1933 to 1939, and the reforms it produced lasted much longer. The formula is a mix of capitalism and socialism and the most successful economic system on earth. It's also known as the mixed economy or social democracy. None of this is hard to understand. It's obvious from the events of the last 80 years, but don't expect a word about it from the media or the university. From day one of the populist era, financial players were planning a comeback in order to regain control of the economy. By the late 1970s, they had morphed into a cartel of Wall Street finance and multinational corporations. These included sweatshop industry in Beijing and oil interests in Moscow and Riyadh. This may be hard to believe since we're supposedly in conflict with Russia and China. The facts tell a more nuanced story. Some people thought it was too big of a coincidence that COVID appeared 3 doors down from a biological weapons lab funded with American cash. But for 2 years, no one could say that on a public platform. Supposedly, it was racist to accuse China and unthinkable to implicate the US. But that was a media dodge used to conceal the reality. The true reason was the CCP's influence over American institutions. But mentioning that might make the public object to a 5,000-mile supply chain. And they might question why key industries were moved to China in the first place. People also might think it's suspicious that corporations made billions on vaccines, COVID restrictions were designed to wreck small businesses, supply chain problems were used to gouge the public with inflation, and the war in Ukraine is making billions more for the oil and weapons industries. Oh, there is savagery upon the land. Of course, corporate media have simplistic narratives to explain all of this, and as usual, the public swallow them like roasted hog on a roll. Nevertheless, the record shows the global elite at their most depraved. For some 50 years, They have been allied with each other against national populations. To them, people across the globe are collateral damage, a speed bump in the search for profits. Yet these are only the latest events. Evidence for the cartel goes back for decades to a corporate and government campaign started in the 1980s. During the Reagan administration, the cartel advanced a globalist agenda to replace the New Deal. That included supply-side economics, open borders, industrial outsourcing, spiraling deficits, runaway war industry spending, and other class war policies added over the next 50 years. Because supply-side and war spending reduced spending for the poor and mentally ill, conservatives have voted for them from day one. And since outsourcing and open borders cut jobs and wages for the working class, liberals signed off on them faster than you can say treachery and betrayal. The agenda was accompanied by a propaganda campaign in the media and university. That included Christian fundamentalism in cable broadcasting and hyperpartisanship in the news media. It was reinforced in the university with bizarre social theories, fictional economics, and cherry-picked anti-American history. More about all of that in other videos. Needless to say, both the policy agenda and publicity campaign have worked like a charm. They've dominated society like a dolphin trainer with a bucket of chum. And these days, global monopolies have gone off the rails. They ignore environmental problems, degrade living conditions to third world levels, gouge the public with inflation, and attack American democracy itself. Thus we have the cartel of global monopolies that dominate American institutions. Recognizing their structure is the first step in confronting them. The next is understanding the propaganda methods in use across society. The next is political organizing to bring them under rational and democratic control.